All right, so back, so like I said, back in 2020, that's when I visited my grandpa in Washington, and like I said, my grandpa and I got in an argument because I was, he was saying that he wanted me to get a job because it's part of the anti-entropic ordering function, and I was telling him, listen, grandpa, I discovered the theory of everything. Can you guys help me get the quadrant model out? And he's like, there's no evidence you discovered the theory of everything, and I was telling him that I wanted to talk to my mom and dad. If I could talk to my mom and dad, maybe they could help me, and also like it'd just be good to be able to see my dad, and my grandpa was like, well, if you got a job, maybe you would see you, but I don't. And basically, I was blaming him. I was like, Grandpa, I feel like the reason why mom and dad won't talk to me is because of your whole like anti-entropic ordering function, your whole thing. Like they misinterpreted it. You're like, we need to make Ryan. Well, Ryan didn't really discover the theory of everything. He just made it up because he wants to stay dependent. And I was like, no, I actually discovered the theory of everything. And the whole thing. Ryan just wants independence is what he really wants. And my parents thought that meant, okay, throw him to the side and never talk to him and never see him. And it's just stupid. I discovered theory of everything, and my grandpa did not help with his ideas. Now, are my grandpa's ideas wrong? No, they might be valid, but at the same time, though, they were not beneficial for me. And like I said, I would try to explain to my grandpa, because I feel like he tried to make me into the bad guy. When the shootaway messed up my shot got messed up. My dad was the one who messed it up. That's the fact of the matter. If I could, I wanted to show my grandpa the videos, but he said he wasn't interested. But I would be able to show my dad, and I'd be able to show him the details. But the fact of the matter is my dad messed up my shot. He got a shoot-away machine, which messed up my shot, and then he told me to do the wrong thing, and he completely destroyed me. I was perfect. I was so unconscious. I would have been a star. My dad was so fucking scared. He was so stupid. He tried so hard to make me really good, which I already was, and I would have been a star. He tried so hard that he screwed up everything. He couldn't have done a better job of screwing me up. Everything he did would be like textbook of how to destroy my shot and how to destroy my game. But he did it. He got the shoot-away machine, which messed up the way I shot, and then he told me to do the wrong thing, and then he got mad at me. And then my grandpa came in, made things worse, and my grandpa was like, oh yeah, well Ryan. Because what happened was my shot was messed up, and then my dad's like, oh, I give up. I can't help you anymore. You fucking suck now. But my dad helped me my whole life. And I didn't even know my shot was messed up. He's the one who was telling me. I didn't know because I was always unconscious, and the shoot-away machine was what messed me up. I was unconscious, and that's why I was so good, but I was unconscious picking the ball off a rack. It's going to mess up your shot. So now my dad's the one who's telling me your shot looks bad. I don't even know. I'm unconscious, so I don't know. So I'm like, Dad, can you help me? He's like, I give up. I can't help you. But because I don't know how to fix it, so then I would be like, Dad, can you come out and look at my shot? And he'd be like, no, I give up. You fucking suck now. But I felt like I needed my dad's help. And then my grandpa comes in. My grandpa's like, Ryan. Because, that's when the abuse started to happen. Then my grandpa comes in. My grandpa's like, Ryan, if your dad says no, a no is a no, and a yes is yes, and you have to accept, and everything is fine, and the universe is anti-entropic ordering function, everything is one, and it's all energy, and everything is just fine. And that's well and good. But he tried to think that I had like a mental issue, and there was something inherently wrong with me, and that's what he encouraged my mom and dad to think that too. My mom was like, yeah, Ryan just has obsessive compulsive disorder, and no, I'm trying to explain to them, it wasn't something wrong with me. It was the shoot-away machine. Dad messed up my shot. I'm practicing picking the ball off the shoot-away machine. There was nothing fucking wrong with me. If it wasn't for the shoot-away machine, none of it would have happened. None of it would have happened. I would have been a star. Everything would have been great. Everyone would have been, Ryan's the best. Oh, he's a hero. He's the greatest, which I am. I discovered the theory of everything. But everyone would have been like, Ryan's the greatest. He's the best. Oh, he's an amazing basketball player. Oh, everything is wonderful. Everything would have been amazing. The fact of the matter is, the shoot-away machine messed up my shot, and it screwed things up. And then my grandpa comes in like, "Oh, Ryan just wants really what Ryan wants is independence, and he, this is normal for a son to be in difficulty with his dad. Kids his age rebel all the time. This is normal. He just wants independence." And my mom and dad are like, "Okay, yeah, he wants independence. Okay, get him out of here." I didn't want independence. It wasn't that fucking complicated. It didn't take a rocket scientist. I didn't want independence. My grandpa, because he's an Ayn Rand fan, he saw everything as everybody wants independence. Everyone just wants independence, and because everyone hates to be dependent, because then you're dependent, and that's dualistic software, and then the people resent you, and then you resent them because you're dependent on them. And okay, great. I understand. I get it. That's a phenomena in reality. I fucking get it. But in my case, that's not what happened. In my case, the shoot-away messed up my shot. I was the best shooter in the country. I would have stayed the best. I would have been one of the best players in the country. I was so amazing. Everything about me, the swag flow, everything. But the shootaway messed up my shot. Then my dad tried to tell me to fix it. Told me to put my right foot pointed to the left, my left foot forward, my right foot to the left. Told me to do the exact wrong thing. And shooting is all about just moving into it naturally. And I was so natural, so perfect. But the shootaway messed it up. And then my dad told me to do the wrong thing. And I'm picking the ball off a rack and doing unnatural, put my footwork unnatural. My dad's like, just spin into it, come on. My dad could not have done a better job of destroying me. He screwed up my shot and screwed me up more than you could. Even if he tried, he couldn't have screwed me up as bad as he did. But that's the thing is my grandpa comes in like, don't, he would later teach me, don't blame, never blame. Well, dude, the fact of the matter is my dad was an idiot. He is the one to blame. He's the one who screwed up my shot. But, according to my grandpa, it might have been my past lives and shit or, also, but you see, my grandpa said, you can't change your dad. You can't change that stuff. All you can do is be in the flow and okay, that happened in the past. Now just go be in the flow and just move on and just go all out and, don't make excuses. I get it. But the fucking thing is, my grandpa confused my parents, and then my parents are like, oh, yeah. Oh, well, Ryan just wants independence. Okay, kick him out of our lives. I could use my parents' help. I could really use my parents' help. That would be a lot of help to have my parents. And for them to fucking be normal people and talk to me and see me. I discovered a theory of everything. I wrote the best raps, some of the best raps in history. I could have been doing big with basketball. If my parents would talk to me and see me, it could be very helpful. But because of my grandpa's, Ryan really wants independence. Weirdo. So when I was in Washington, I was telling my grandpa, I feel like you're the one who kind of screwed the shit up. And I'm not saying I'm an innocent victim. I'm not saying I'm an angel. Yes, I was anti-white Darwin. I became an anti-white Darwinian Marxist. I was always anti-white my whole life. I saw myself as Jewish. I was anti-white. So I wasn't an innocent victim. But the fact of the matter is, I felt like my grandpa did not help. So, but then my grandpa got mad at me, and then he said, "I'm not going to teach you anymore. I'm not going to send myself to your software." So then I wanted my grandpa to teach me. So then when I went back to Los Angeles, I went back to being a leftist Marxist because I had started trying to understand my grandpa's teachings and take responsibility. But then I went back to Los Angeles and I became a Marxist again. I was like, my grandpa's teachings are, I wrote my Based on True Story book. I was like, my grandpa's teachings, and I posted up on Facebook, my grandpa's teachings are victim blaming. He's a victim blamer. He's a conservative. I saw victim blaming as white supremacist, and I thought that his existential metapsychiatry was essentially just victim blaming. And I was like, his whole whole anti-welfare, don't make people dependent because, people want to be independent and giving doesn't necessarily help people. I'm like, yeah, he's just a white supremacist and he's a Nazi. And I basically just wrote a Marxist diatribe against my grandpa on my Based on True Story book. And it was, because what happened was I listened to a lecture that I made in 2013 where I talked about victim blaming, because I was always anti-victim blaming because I felt like that's what my family did to me. And I knew that it wasn't me. It was a shoot away machine. It was my dad. And if they would have I want to just talk to my dad and explain to him, listen, Dad, it was a shoot away machine. Now, my mom and dad don't want to believe that. My mom and dad want to be like, no, you were just mentally ill. It wasn't a shoot. You were mentally ill. Okay, I wasn't perfect. It was a tragic situation. I was a 16-year-old being abused. My shot got messed up. I'm not perfect. Yes, a lot of trauma happened, and then I tried to get my dad to help me, and then it led to fights, and I punched some walls and stuff like that. Okay, that happened. I wasn't an angel. But the fucking thing is, that was when I was 16 years old. Now, I discovered theory of everything. Let's move on. Everything is good. But they're stuck in the past. And they say, I'm stuck in the past. I'm not stuck in the past. I want to move on. I want to rekindle a relationship. They don't. Because my mom, they think I'm mentally ill. But I'm not mentally ill. I discovered the theory of everything. So it's just stupid. But, so I go back to Los Angeles. I'm basically, so then I do like an it's because the other thing was my grandpa, like when I was talking to my grandpa, I wanted my grandpa to start teaching me again. And my grandpa told me white supremacy is not the flow. So I was like, okay, white supremacy is not the flow. So I have to be for race mixing because I didn't understand the flow yet. He didn't teach me well. So I didn't understand the flow and that flow is pure awareness and being able to see the truth. I didn't get it at this time. And I was like, okay, well, the flow would be like hippie Marxism, race mixing. Like so I became like anti white supremacist again, thinking that I was following my grandpa's teachings because I didn't understand my grandpa's teachings. So I went back to my default, seeing myself as Jewish and being for race mixing. So, I started doing like, talking about, like some of the things I was talking about, like I was saying basically that, what's his name? The guy who ended up getting killed, who couldn't breathe, the black guy. I forget his name. Let's just say Michael Brown or whatever. I forget the black guy's name who was killed, who started up the riots. But the Black Lives Matter riots, I was like, he's basically a martyr. He's basically Jesus because, Jesus was himself a victim. Because I wanted to make the victims and the blacks and the browns and everybody the greatest. So, like, he was a victim, and, like, Jesus was a victim because Jesus was seen as a bastard, and he probably became mentally ill and probably became schizophrenic. And actually, the schizophrenics are actually, it's a social construction, and they're actually the good ones. They're the ones who are scapegoated and the identified patients of society. And he, he was just a victim like Jesus, and he was crucified like Jesus was crucified. And actually, the black man is the original man. They came from Africa. Everybody comes from the black man. Everything anti-white. Seeing myself as Jewish, wanting to promote the black guy to destroy the white guy. But I was like, the black man's original, and actually, the desire for the white man to kill the black man is Freudian, because the black man is the original man, so he's the father of the white man, and so therefore when the white man wants to kill the black man, that's actually Freudian, the Oedipal dynamic, where the son wants to kill the father, trying to make the black man into like God and the father, and I was looking at things in a Freudian perspective because, again, I liked Freudian stuff because I was anti-religion. I saw religion as white supremacy. I saw, especially Christianity, and I wanted to destroy religion because I wanted race mixing, and I wanted to destroy society and destroy the white man because I saw the white man as the greatest threat to the Jew. So, I basically, I did a whole Marxist diatribe, my whole based on true story book, and my friend told me hundreds of thousands of people read my book because he looked at it says how many people look at your book, and hundreds of thousands of people looked at my book, my based on true story book. And it was about, like, basically it was a Marxist diatribe, anti-white. And I was like, I was against victim blaming. So I was like, the white people say that the black people sold themselves into slavery, but that's just victim blaming. But really the white man, when he went into Africa, he disrupted their economic societies, and that forced the black man to, that caused chaos, and that caused the black man to sell the other black men into slavery, and it's really the white man's fault. And we shouldn't victim blame, and the way that we could, because my grandpa also told me, so my grandpa was teaching me that because I asked him, like, well, what do you think about Black Lives Matter and like black pride? And my grandpa was like, well, it's better than seeing themselves as inferior, because if you see yourself as superior, then at least if you have pride, then at least that's closer to the flow, because if you're depressed, then you're not close to the flow. So I was like, okay, yeah, black pride is good. But I was like, but what about white supremacy? He was like, no, because my grandpa was like, the flow is not white supremacy. When you're in the flow, you see things pure awareness, and you're not worried about if you're superior or you're inferior. You just go all out and you just try to excel. Because if you think about being superior, inferior, or equal, like feminism, a lot of them want to be equal. My grandpa said, you don't want to be equal either. That's Lilith, who wants to be equal to Adam. My grandpa would say, you don't want to be equal either. You want to just go all out, be in the flow, get pure awareness, constant inquiry, constant development, and never settle. But I was like, okay, yeah, good. So black pride is good. So I was like, yeah. So I was basically trying to say, like, that I thought, black pride is good, and Black Lives Matter is good because, a lot of the police officers do express dualistic software. And I was talking, my anti-police, justice system, because I'm like, yeah, and the justice system doesn't help people. And, there's this one tribe where instead of putting people in jail, if they do bad, what they do is they put them in a circle, and everybody tells them how much they love them. And that's what we really need, because really, all criminality is just, I had a Marxist perspective. All criminality is just the basis of economic stratification, and people being isolated and alienated, and then they act out, and then they end up becoming the identified patients and the scapegoats of society. And that's a lot of times, the black man is the identified patient and the scapegoat of society. But really, I wanted all the black people to be let out of jail and the police to be gone, so that the black man could destroy and Marxist revolutions and destroy the white race and mix the white race, and so the black man will prevail, and then the Jew will be the best. Because then the Jew will have no competition, because the white man's gone. If the white man's gone, the Jew has no competition. It's just black people. I always liked black people a lot, and I always didn't like white people. And I think it's because, if you look at it, like, it's kind of like Shmuley Boteaki's like, I was like this too. He's like, yeah, the Jews always got along really well with the Muslim Arabs, but it was always just the Christians. It's the white Christians who the Jews always had trouble. So because I hated the idea of victim blaming. I hated how the white people be like, oh, 109 countries. You Jews have been kicked out of 109 countries. and I'd be like, and I would see that as victim blaming, and I hated that. So I was like, well, it's not our fault. It's not the Jews' fault. It's the white people's fault. That's why because the white people were the ones who made the Jews into money lenders. Because according to Christians, the white people couldn't be money lenders, so they made the Jews into them, and it's all the white people's fault. But my grandpa said it's not anybody's fault. It's dualistic software. It's never anybody's fault. But I didn't understand that at the time. So I'm like, so I want to be like, yeah, it wasn't the Arabs. The Jews got along well with the Arabs, but that's because if you look at it in the satanic perspective, the Jews liked the people of color, but they never liked the white people. They want to destroy the white race. And even in the Bible, you see it, like the Philistines were apparently Indo-Europeans, and they're the ones who are defeating the Jews. But again, I hated the idea that it was punishment from God, because in the Bible, the way that the Bible looks at it in the perspective of the reason why an enemy comes and defeats you is because you were sinning. Because my grandpa would say it's not because God punished you, because that's magical thinking, but my grandpa would say you weren't in the flow, and there's consequences, and some of that could be that you're conquered and stuff, right? So, but I hated that. I thought that was victim blaming, and I want to be like, no, that's not what happened. Really, what happened was they were conquered, and then they tried to because people are inherently conservative by nature, so then they try to justify the conquering because conservatism always helped to maintain tribes and stuff. So it's just inherent within the human psyche. So they told themselves, oh, well, we were punished because of our sins, because people want to believe that sins are bad because being good and non-sinful helps to maintain the tribal unity. So when you are the victim, you tell yourself, oh, I must have deserved it, because it maintains the conservative aspect of your society. So I was like, yeah, that's really what happened. It wasn't because of sin. But if you look in the Bible, a lot of times it's like the Philistines or the Hittites, who were apparently Indo-European. I don't know. Again, that's what the scholars say. But again, what the scholars say isn't necessarily true. But, they're Indo-European. So, it's usually the Indo-Europeans who are defeating the Jews due to the Jews' sin. But I didn't want to see it that way. And I didn't realize that I was not in the flow and that I was in dualistic software. And so this is the other thing that I taught. Like, you see, again, my grandpa confused me. So basically, I was anti-white. And so that's predator-prey dualistic software toward white people. But I'll kind of get to, again, how my grandpa confused me. Like, my grandpa, when I went to Kauai in 2013, I remember I went to a church thing with him, and my grandpa said, why is it that so many more women go to church? It's because women tend to be more relationship oriented. But then after the church, I went to my grandpa. I was like, Grandpa, don't make generalizations about women. Don't make generalizations. Because I was a leftist, Marxist, anti-white, but my grandpa didn't know that. But I was like, don't make generalizations. But the reason why I was so into that was because I didn't want people to make generalizations about blacks, because I wanted people to think, yeah, black people are just as smart as white people. And if black people were just in better environments, there'd be as many black doctors as white doctors. And if white people were in the ghetto, then there'd be as many white basketball players as black basketball players. And it's just all environment. And don't make generalizations because there's some black people who are really smart, and there's some white people who are really stupid, and don't make generalizations. But really I wanted race mixing, and I wanted to be like, race is social construction, and I wanted to think the same thing about women too. So, and everything. So, but I carried it on to everything. And because I was really just anti-Nazi, and so like, don't make generalizations. Like, but so when I was talking to my grandpa, I was trying to, but then I think that I maybe influenced my grandpa to be more like that. So like, I asked my grandpa, why is it that women tend to be, or like little girls tend to be more inclined to playing with dolls, but little boys play with the trucks and the knives and stuff? And my grandpa was like, because, he said he thought it was more environment, that the parents make them that way. But because my grandpa didn't like to believe in like genetics, that things are genetic, because then you make justifications based around that, and you just be on the flow. So my grandpa said, don't worry about all that stuff. Just be in the flow. Just go all out. Just work on being in the flow, expanding your awareness. But I didn't understand that. I was still seeing things in Darwinism and Freudianism, and I didn't understand that wasn't the flow, and that wasn't existentially valid, because again, I wanted to believe Darwinism and Freudianism, and then that justified me having sex out of wedlock and stuff, and me doing that. But it was anti-religion, and I just was anti-white, but I didn't see that. I didn't see it. But basically, I went back to being a leftist, and I wrote my Based on True Story book, and it was leftist Marxism, and I was kept on talking about, like, don't make generalizations about black people and white people and men and women. There's men who are good at math, and there's women who are bad at math, and vice versa. And don't make generalizations. And if you're in the flow, you see people as individuals. And basically, I was just trying to encourage race mixing and just basically destroy society, but under the garb of being compassionate and being open-minded. And okay, so that was what happened in 2020.